Good morning, everyone. It's 9:30. I would welcome everyone here and call this meeting to order. I would ask that we stand for a moment of silent reflection. I would ask Council if there's any pecuniary interest, any disclosures of interest for this morning's agenda. Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk if there is anything to rise and report from our in-camera sessions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. There's one item to rise and report. It's a motion with respect to QP 1291 and the Labour Settlement, moved by Councillors Boucher and Hand, that County Council authorize the Corporate Manager, Human Resources, to execute the proposed collective agreement with QP 1291. That motion was carried.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask for a motion to allow our delegations to come within the rail. Councillor Gillis and Deputy Warden McCharles. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. And we'd asked, we have Mr. Bill Yurchuk from Lambton Elderly Outreach to give us updates on transportation and pilots. So come on in and take a seat. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Bill Yurchuk. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Lambton Elderly Outreach. I know many of you, however, I've only been in my role just over 2 years, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to come and introduce myself to those I don't know, but also give an update as to what's happening at Lambton Elderly Outreach and give some insight into a couple of pilots that we're working on if I could. So many of you know, but some of you may not, that our mandate is essentially to provide services to our seniors and to our adults with disabilities to allow them to remain in their homes as long as possible, to maintain their independence. Those services include things such as transportation, where we have 18 accessible vehicles that are on the road every day, literally 365 days a year, providing both medical and social trips for our seniors and our adults with disabilities to allow them to be mobile in our county, otherwise who may not be. We had this year, ending of March, we had over 34,000 rides, which included over 1 million kilometers. We finally hit the 1 million kilometer barrier, which we're kind of proud of with regards to service. It is a fee-for-service, which is subsidized through the United Way as well as the LIN, Local Health Integration Network, for those who are applicable for the subsidies. And our fee structure is such that is an affordable thing for our community, but necessary due to only limited funding that we receive. We also have a fleet of volunteers who are able to ride our clients who are ambulatory, and they ride in their own vehicles, to which we pay per kilometer rate to those for fuel and maintenance of their vehicle. And that program is very, very busy, as I said, working every day. And there's a pilot within transportation I'll speak about in a moment. In addition to that, we have personal support work supporting personal support care for our clients, as well as homemaking, meal preparation, things like that, things that you'd think about that may allow them to remain in their home. A home maintenance program which does snow removal, lawn maintenance, leaf collection. Just a few inches of snow could prevent some of our community members from getting to the hospital or the doctor and so forth, so that is a very demanded service. We have one crew that works in North Lambton and another crew that works in the rest of the county, mostly in Sarnia. The reason for that is just they're so busy that in Sarnia proper we can't get them out into the county as much as possible. So my goal is to try to add at least one and maybe even two other maintenance crews to facilitate the rest of the county in that service. The cost barriers, of course, are equipment and vehicles, so we're working on that. We have Meals on Wheels program, which is both frozen and hot in only some communities based on suppliers, but frozen meals cover the entire county. And we have fitness classes that we partner with the VON and run inside of retirement homes. If you recall, when the retirement homes had physiotherapy offered by the province, when that was removed, it was replaced by these smart fitness classes, to which we are in partnership with the VON to facilitate. And we have a client intervention officer who is a social worker with her master's in social work, who provide support and counseling to our community members who require it in the areas of potential eviction, in transition into retirement or long-term care, also hoarding situations, cognitive issues if they have no local family and they require an advocate for what they need. She's extremely busy, and in fact, she's probably at double the capacity she should be with her workload. So that is also another program. We're going to build a business case and seek LIN funding to try to grow in the very near future so that we can add another person to do that type of work. The two pilots that I wanted to talk about, so if of course, if there's any questions on the services, feel free, but the two pilots that I want to talk about, one is we're adding a stretcher-compatible van to our transportation fleet to facilitate the clients who require transportation, either to and from home to hospital or hospital to home, of course, including retirement long-term care homes, who may not be able to ride for that length of time, even in a wheelchair, sitting upright, so forth. There are many clients who are in that situation. And our pricing model will be very, very modest. We are only going to, of course, cover costs. We're not for profit, but we are not receiving any funding for this pilot. Leo themselves, we have taken it upon ourselves to use bingo money to purchase this vehicle. So at this point, it is not LIN funded, or in fact, not LIN funded from anywhere. But we have received a lot of demand, and I'm sure you have too, from our retirement homes and so forth with regards to this type of transportation. Some of our community members are paying almost $1,000 to get to and from London for medical appointments and so forth, who require stretcher transportation. Excuse me. So we feel we can do that at a much more affordable cost for our community members who are able to do that, and hopefully we can provide a service that might be lacking due to the cost of other services available. It will be classified as a pilot program. However, we of course own the vehicles, so we will do an assessment after a period of time and see how that's working out. If by any chance it doesn't work out quite well, the vehicle itself is compatible to hold two wheelchairs, so we could simply add it to our complement of vehicles and just carry on as normal. So there certainly wouldn't be any loss if we have any unsuccess in that pilot. We are partnering up with the Community Support Center in Belle River. Tracy Bailey is the executive director there. Her and I sit together on the CareLink group through the LIN, and they're running the similar pilot. We're independent geographically, but we're using the same set of policies and procedures. And the policies and procedures are set up so that when the RFP, the request for purchase, comes from the hospital to provide this service on a larger scale, then our policies and procedures and therefore standards will meet their requirements. So we would be an eligible candidate, hopefully, for that. I saw a couple of hands, sir. Do we do that later or now?
I'll let you finish your report.
Okay, thank you.
We'll take questions following.
Thank you. So we're just a couple of weeks probably for delivery on this vehicle. It was a 6-week delivery to which we're almost finished. So very excited to report that. We'll start a marketing strategy very soon to let our citizens know, and as well as the long-term homes and retirement homes know, that this service will be available, and we'll proceed with that. And the other pilot that I want to speak about is the Housing and Homelessness initiative that is funded from the county, and we thank you for that. I'm sure you're quite familiar with how that came about. I won't speak at length of the 4 pilots. However, ours is a seniors pilot where we are addressing the potential homelessness of some of our community members by looking at the hospital in the ALC, alternative level of care beds, and people who are there were put there for medical reasons but may now still be there due to financial reasons. They have a copay to take care of at the hospital. They may have had to give up their apartment or even their home to be able to get the treatment at the hospital, and now they've improved to the point where they can be released. However, they may not have anywhere to go, and the hospital is housing them simply not to send them to the street. Quite literally, that's where they would be. So that's half of our target, and the other target is seniors who are living in perhaps substandard housing in the community where they may be being taken advantage of by family members financially, or they just may be in a substandard situation that it's not proper living conditions. And both of these groups of people, if they meet our criteria and our eligibility requirements, we can provide. So we've made relationships with some of the retirement homes who have agreed to offer us a subsidy of their cost. And then we can provide a subsidy from the pilot program, and those 2 subsidies added together with the client's existing income, which is normally Canada Pension and Old Age Security, they can afford to live in a retirement home. So coming literally from the street or from the hospital into a retirement home where they're in fact thriving both medically and socially. This is decreasing hospital visits, emergency visits, so forth, and their quality of life has just improved dramatically. If we remove someone from an ALC bed in the hospital, financially that's a savings of approximately $20,000 to $35,000 per month for the hospital because of the cost of living in the hospital. And quite honestly, our subsidy component is ranging anywhere from $300 to $600 per month. So you do the math on that annually, it's approaching $900,000 of savings, and that is only doing the math on the 7 people that we've been able to remove from the hospital. So if you multiply that by the potential, it is quite staggering. We currently have 19 citizens in the pilot. We originally felt we could handle 20. However, we're going to be able to exceed that because our cost per month is lower than we anticipated. Our only roadblock in this is the available beds in the retirement homes. So we're building relationships with those homes and trying to grow the complement of beds available, and we could fill every one probably. And I'm out of time.
Okay. I have a question.
Councilor I appreciate your presentation, the work you are doing for the community. One question I have is related to the transportation service you provide to the community within the county. Some municipalities within the Confederation of the Lambton are actually having their public transportation services provided. Are you trying to perhaps integrate some of your needs with those? And it's not just a question of just routing, etc. It's also perhaps technical collaboration. You know, we do have mechanics, etc. And I think the opportunities are there. We're renewing our bus fleet within the city of Sarnia. There could be, like you say, you're buying another one. Do you have ongoing communication with the municipalities that do have the public transportation?
Yes, thank you. So we with the Sarnia Transit, and more particular the caravan program, that's what closely links to what we provide. We use a software built by a company called TripSpark, and it's the nickname or the name of it is Novus. And recently, Sarnia Transit has started to implement this software in their scheduling. It's a scheduling software component to which we've been involved with now for almost 3 years. So we have quite a bit of expertise in that software. And we've met with the guys from Sarnia Transit in regards to that, and they asked our opinion of the software because it was just before they were about to launch that. Now, what that software allows us to do, if both parties are willing, is to literally view on computer screens each other's trips, if you will. So we don't see the vans moving on the GPS, but we know where the vans are. We can see the schedules. So, for example, if we have a client who can't be met due to our capacity. And if we have that type of agreement, we could literally work with the city and book onto their vans, and conversely, they could book onto ours. We're currently piloting this type of relationship with the Red Cross because we also use the same software. So that is definitely a potential. We already provide referrals back and forth, so we do have a good working relationship with them. One small limitation, of course, is City of Transit has to stay within city proper, and we provide offers to the whole county. So when Sarnia Transit Caravan Program receives referrals to which they cannot accommodate due to geography, then those referrals come to us. So yes, sir, we do have a good working relationship. The technology is in a situation where we could collaborate even further, and I think that would be a wise thing to do to handle efficiencies and everything else like that.
To that is, right now the Sarnia Transit actually goes beyond the boundaries of the city. We have a good collaborative experience with the village of Point Edward. And again, for your future consideration, perhaps that could be expanded further out. So I appreciate you actually working. I'm glad to hear what you've been saying.
Point Edward and also Brights Grove, which technically Sarnia handles that, but I was referring more to Petrolia, Corunna, Moortown, so forth. But yes, definitely.
Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Warden Weber and members of County Council. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Yurchuk, and also thank you very much for the invitation to your volunteer recognition event last week. Yes, it was a wonderful event, and I know Councillor Arnold and Councillor Napper were there as well as Councillor White, and I'm sure we certainly had a wonderful time, so thank you so much for that. I really want to applaud what you're doing with this, the pilot project, particularly the stretcher-compatible van. You've really identified a need there, and I would dare say that you're one of the first that has identified that kind of need that we're seeing all the time. And you mentioned the numbers, and you're not off from the numbers that I know of. And I like the way that you incorporated your best practices with other municipalities that have done the same thing. So, and the fact that you've got your paperwork in order to take this past the pilot project into the next phase. So you're well ahead of the game on everything. And you've certainly come a long way from just what we used to think of as Leo as simply a method of transportation. You're just expanding beyond all of that. And I just wanted to say congratulations. You're doing a fabulous job, and I know we're going to hear great things in the future from you, but the expectations that you've set for the community are very high, and you've been able to meet all of those expectations. So thank you so much.
Councillor Napper.
Well, thank you very much, and Bill, very thanks for your presentation there. Councillor Gillis pretty well said what I was going to say. Having experienced in the past of needing an ambulatory transportation, it's pretty costly, especially when you've got somebody in the home, and usually it's a financial strain. I remember one time it was $750 or something to go to London. Another thing that people overlook too, I think, when you get discharged from the hospital, it's your responsibility to get that person back to the home, and that's $100 and some just for a little ride. And I think EMS will take you for $50, so you'd be better to call them. But I don't know whether the home picks up that cost or not in some cases. And I guess we don't need to know, but it's I think around $130 the last time I had that happen, and $300 to Sarnia. So for you to see that need, it was really great. And being a regular customer, the service is just fantastic. It's something that needs, and it gets people home. In my case, just for 6 hours a week, and that's good. They're satisfied. They got a home, and they get home, and so I congratulate you for everything you've done. I've always been a supporter because you're a pretty good tenant of ours too. So I got to keep you happy that way. But congratulations for seeing a need out there that we certainly needed. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I want to thank you for the update. Very much appreciated, and the work that you do is appreciated. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. We have another delegation here as a follow-up delegation from a previous report. Then we're asked back to speak to us again. So we have the St. Patrick's High School, have students here to talk about the I Was Not There project, so come on forward. I believe the report was on everyone's desk here. Is it not? It was sent out electronically yesterday, and there is a copy on the desks. So, welcome, and you can give us a little update on funding.
Good morning, Lambton County Council. We would like to thank you for inviting us back and letting us share this project with you again. For a refresher of what our project is about, our project is to showcase the historical sites of Lambton County in a new and exciting way. 360-degree cameras let us drop the viewer into the historical site itself and experience a new world around them. 360 cameras create a new tool to expand tourism, education, preservation, and entertainment in Lambton County.
We are mainly here to discuss the budget and costs of our project. We've created a finalized spreadsheet and a total cost for the project. The body that will be accepting money will be I Was Not There Club that is run out of St. Patrick's Catholic High School and consists of all team members working on this project right now. We are all grade 11 students, with the exception of myself. I'm a grade 12, and we are working on Lambton's wonders right now. But this club will be run after we finish the project, and other students in the future will take over this future project for 360-degree videos to showcase Lambton's pride and local pride. The number we have come up with is a price of $4,900. This will let us create a full HD quality and amazing experience for the user. We have been so far trying to use everything at a free level, but this has limits, and this is why we need this equipment. So, let me just scroll through here. There you go. This is our budget. For example, we need a website that will have all the storage for all their pictures and videos so we can upload it and people can, view them well. Then we also want to do some public showing, so we'll need headsets that we can put our phones into that allow us to watch the YouTube videos at a wider stage, say at Lambton Mall or something. Also earbuds so they can listen to them. The next item is the cameras. Our first one, that is the $3,000 camera, is a Ninja 400 360 GoPro rig, or ParaPro 220. It's a camera that has 4 different cameras all around it on one central rig. That films that way, that way, that way, and that way. Then we merge it all together, and we can post it so that then we can put it into 360 degrees so you can view it on computers, phones, or anything else. We'd also need transportation to various locations. For example, our driver, Mr. Walicki, drove us out to the Oil Museum of Canada, where we filmed a short little teaser trailer we filmed for a video. That teaser trailer is available on our website.
What we have done since our last county meeting. We have been featured on the front page of the Sarnia Observer. We have appeared in front of the Sarnia City Council, and we have been featured on CBC Ontario Morning. Also tonight, we are going to do a feature on Cogeco TV. And again, if you want to see that trailer for the Oil Museum of Canada, that will be on our website. But for time concerns, we will not show that today. We are also still looking for partners to help us finish this project, and any input from community would be greatly appreciated, as we love hearing your input on this project, as it is not just our project, it's Lambton's project. Thank you again for inviting us back, and have a great day.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions of councillors? Mayor Case. Councillor Case.
Mr. Warden, I'd be happy to move the motion to fund this project and offer congratulations to the folks as well. So I'll make that motion.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Gillis. Councillor Brukowitz, question?
Yes, indeed. Our agenda shows Mr. Walitsky as the delegation here, and I wonder whether we could see the guy who is really the force behind it. I believe he used to work for the county at one time, and now he's really having this exciting project. Could I ask Mr. Walitsky a question? And by the way, Walitsky is the original, I share heritage, common heritage root. So I think I pronounced it right, a little bit different than you did. Could I ask Robert a question? Because he's actually shown here as a delegation.
Here I think that mic can be turned on for you there. I think Jay can get that mic working, possibly. Go ahead.
Robert, I really appreciate your work for channel this youthful energy in what becomes the Lambton Community Project, and I will be supporting the motion. But I also would like to look a little bit further out in the future. That has a potential of being ongoing, living history sort of project. And you, as the assistant head of technology and computer studies at St. Patrick's High School, perhaps can be a sort of custodian or the trustee of the investment that the county, the city, and whoever else in the community will make. So for the future, the students are there and they do extremely beneficial work for the community of the county. Do you see St. Patrick's School as being sort of a host for equipment, software, etc., in the future to continue that beyond this 150th anniversary celebration?
Well, the whole idea behind this was that what the students wanted. Absolutely, I think we are in a position where we can accept that sort of responsibility, and we sort of do this on a continuous basis with a lot of different resources and materials. The whole idea is that the youth nowadays lives in a world of social media, and I think that they really hope that the rest of our community sort of buys into it, so as far as contributing factors to it. So this becomes a living project, an ongoing project, not just a temporary thing. So I think the students and the youth that we have at our school, these are just few of the examples of that, are more than capable to sort of take that responsibility on for foreseeable future. I mean, County of Lambton is doing a wonderful job with their library divisions, right? With the maker lab and all of that stuff. I think some of those things can in the future expand to sort of be cooperative with all of those kind of venues. So I think that this can go on. I think that it's not only sort of a interest point or entertainment value, but I think somebody brought the idea of preservation. And a lot of these buildings, a lot of those structures, a lot of those environments that the kids want to see and hopefully there will be input for, they might not be there 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So I think some of the equipment that they requested is basically giving them much higher quality. So those things that they record can serve as a sort of a preservation factor of keeping those places alive for longer too.
I am all in. I'll be supporting the motion, and thank you all, the students and Robert and the school. Marvelous. Thank you.
Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Warden Weber. I know the mover and the seconder have made the motion to go ahead and fund this. I understand that these folks appeared before Sarnia City Council. It was referred to next year's budget or something, but they weren't really on board. So that's one of the reasons why you folks are here, which is great. You're here because you know the county is a wonderful, caring body. And I would suggest, though, that to the mover and seconder that this be put under the administration, the money that's being dispersed through our Cultural Services Division. as far as an archival, being the county's funding the entire project, I would assume that somewhere along the line it's going to have a place to call home, whether it be the website, which it says it's only going to be for a year. Well, no offense, but if it's only going to be for a year, it's not going to do anything for me, because I'm an old guy, but I intend to be around for a long time. And what we're archiving is stuff that should be around for a long time. And you guys are doing a great job so far, and I see you guys doing a wonderful job on the long term. So I think it needs to be somehow enveloped within the cultural services of the county personally. And if that's not the intent, I guess I'd like to understand what the intent is. You know, the equipment and all the rest of it, realizing it's going to stay at St. Pat's and continue to be built on and utilized and all that good stuff. But the long-term archival database has got to be held somewhere. And if it's going to be cultural stuff in the county, then why not have it as part of the cultural division, and any money that's sent out? I would think that there's wiggle room in our cultural services budget to find the $5,000, because the mover and seconder have not identified where the money's coming from. If we go strictly by the rules and regulations that Mr. Innes has for us that we all agreed to, part of this doesn't fit. So I would hope that we can find a way to massage it through the Cultural Services Division to make it fit somehow. So I would ask a friendly amendment to our mover and seconder to have it over through the Cultural Services Division.
Okay, that's agreeable. Is there Councillor Gillis?
Thank you, Warden Weber, members of County Council, and Councillor Arnold is quite right. These wonderful entrepreneurs of history came and did present to Sarnia City Council, and we gave them several suggestions. One of them was the Creative Community Fund, because it certainly would fit in there. But looking at the email that we received last night, obviously there's an urgency to this, and ergo, here we are. I would ask, actually, if the group and the club would work in synchronization a bit with the Lambton Historical Society, the Sarnia Historical Society, the Sarnia Heritage Committee, and we have several Lambton. We have several historical sites and museums within Lambton County that have archival information that you could probably use as you develop and broaden out what you're doing. Because obviously I think you have your 10 right now, but as a club, you're going to grow in what you want to use. So you need to develop a good working relationship with our corporate cultural officer, and I'm sure he's just dying to he is bursting with ideas to give you. So congratulations on everything you've done. Perseverance certainly has paid off. You've gotten a lot of notoriety from the press, and I dare say probably will get a lot more as this continues on. Thank you very much for bringing this idea to us, and I wish you all the success.
We're all clear on the motion. Oh, Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Warden, members of County Council. Would this not be a good place to take it out of the County Creative Fund? Is this not somewhere, should we be asking Andrew if that's a good fit? Because to me, that would be a better fit for everybody here in the room. Would it not, or am I wrong?
Mr. Innes, could I call on you?
The biggest concern that we have here is you've already established a process for applications towards that fund and how the funds are going to be distributed. With the way that the motion is written right now, you've indicated that you would like monies to come from the Cultural Services Division in order to support this, but you're allowing staff to determine where the most appropriate place to take those funds are. So I think we can accomplish the goal of what you're looking for with this, and we will report eventually where the funds are withdrawn from, but I don't see any significant issue with funding this request through the 2017 budget.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you very much for your presentations. We'll look forward to the videos wherever we can find them.
Thank you guys very much.
Item number 8 is the minutes of open and closed session from April 5th. Motion on the minutes. Councillor Cook and Councillor Gillis. Any question on the minutes from April 5th? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Correspondence. We have correspondence to receive and file. There's a recommendation that be received and filed. Is there any item of that correspondence moved by Councillor Case, second by Councillor Busse? Any items that we'd like pulled from that list of correspondence? Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Warden Weber, members of County Council. If you see item B, there's a letter from Clark Somerville, the president of Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and I would be remiss if I did not bring it forward to you for your consideration. As you know, the Legal Defense Fund has been fully depleted, and President Clark has given you the information. President Somerville has given the information of why. It certainly has been a very useful fund for many municipalities across the country. So they are requesting that we, they've provided an invoice if we would be kind enough to voluntarily support this, and I would ask, and I would like to make a motion that we do.
Right now we have a motion to receive and file.
I'm sorry.
I would pull that report, so item B, we'll deal with it separately.
Okay.
Is there any other reports that we'd like to deal with separately? I would call the vote on the motion to receive and file all items except for number B. I think I have that. All in favor of that? That's carried. Your questions on other ones? No. So we dealt with all the correspondence except for item B. Councillor Gillis, you'd like to speak to item B.
And I have nothing further to add than I already have. I'm sorry. I apologize for jumping ahead. The excitement of the moment. But really, this particular fund has been beneficial to all. And who knows if we ourselves will not have to utilize it at some point. It's not a lot of money to ask for, but it certainly is necessary to rebuild that fund. So I make the motion that we do support and pay this. It can be done, as I understand it, either today, as the invoice has been presented, or in September, as I understand it. So I guess that would be up to the discretion.
So we have a motion to support the FCM Legal Defense Fund to the amount of $3279.91. That would be the motion. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hand. Question? Councillor Arnold? No. Councillor Broad.
Thanks, Warden Weaver. I'm trying to understand why there's HST on giving money to this fund. Someone please help me understand that. I just don't understand that.
Mr. Innes?
It's surprising and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but the reason that there's HST on it is simply because the fact that you are going to be providing the funds and they're going to be used in turn to retain the services of an outside party to provide services provided. We had a situation where we received a grant from the province about 2 years ago when we went through a CRA audit. We retained the services of a not-for-profit local agency to deliver training, and we were told by CRA that that should have been a taxable supply to us. We should have been charging HST on it. So what I can say to you is this is one of these weird and wonderful rules that CRA has come up with that we have to comply with. It is not a grab. It is not any sort of a anomaly on the part of the FCM. They're simply complying with the rules that the CRA has put in place.
Yes, I'd just like to ask, if I could, through you, to Councillor Gillis, could she give me some examples of how this money was spent in the past, what good things it done for Lambton County?
On the actual legal defense, we haven't utilized, as far as I know, the FCM for this purpose. Others have, particularly on right-of-way issues, and that has been the biggest driver of the legal defense fund usage, is right-of-ways.
Okay, Councillor Buzowicz.
The amount of money may be small, almost immaterial. At the same time, I have a problem with the approach that's been taken here. It's a very simple way to build those reserves is to actually do that through the regular budgets, have a levy increased to the municipalities, and this way we know everybody is treated the same way. All this, like, I'm startled to see that we have this immediate call for contributions, that's part of the business that they're doing, and it should be part of the normal fiscally sustainable approach rather than this sort of like a sort of urgency basis. And some people will participate, some people will not, and that's not fair to all the members. So I have a difficulty with that. They can simply increase their levy to municipalities, raise the money needed, and build the reserves.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? The motion is to fund this request. All in favor of that? Opposed? I'd say that motion's lost. Did I count correctly? Let's do that again. All those in favor? Say go. 2, 3, 8. Okay, you're counting the.
I request a recorded vote to make life easier for you, Warden.
Appreciate that, Councillor Case. We're going to have a recorded vote on this. Okay. So I would call for the recorded vote.
Todd Case. No. Doug Cook. Peter Gilliland. Yes. Anne-Marie Gillis. Yes. Bev Hand. Yes. Bev McDougall. Kevin Marriott. No. John McCharles. Yes. Don McGugan. Yes. Lonnie Napper. Ian Veen. Yes. Bill Weber.
No.
Steve Arnold. Yes. Dave Bushy. Yes. Mike Bradley. Al Broad. No. And Andy Brucewitz. No. The motion, I think, is carried.
No wonder I couldn't count that one.
That's why we needed to.
Thank you. Item B, resolutions. This is for the Federation of Municipalities. Councillor Gillis, resolution support. Councillor Arnold, you had. This is for the nominations for the FCM Board of Directors. Councillor Arnold.
Yes, I would like to nominate Anne-Marie Gillis, our Councillor Anne-Marie, to serve on this committee once again. I think she's done a wonderful job. She brings us regular updates, as others have in the past over the years. And I think it's so important that we have a strong advocate on behalf of Lambton County in regards to that board. I know there's been more than one of us in the past have tried to have a seat and be part of that organization, have been unsuccessful. and yet Anne Marie continues to be there as a strong advocate for us, and I, for one, really appreciate her dedication to the task, and I'd be honored to make a motion to have her represent us once again.
I have a whole bunch of seconders. I've seen Councillor Cases first. Any other questions? All in favor of that? No recorded vote necessary. That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to thank my esteemed body for that vote of confidence. It really is a pleasure to serve all of you. It certainly is a pleasure to represent rural Canada, and the number of people that we have with the similarities is quite staggering. I did want to bring a couple of items of attention to you as you go to the AGM, and the Rural Caucus in particular, because that is becoming a very strong advocate for rural Canada. The biggest things that's being talked about right now, and Councillor Broad, I picked up on his concern, is the railway crossings and the fact of the monies that's being put forward, given the fact that there are going to be new federal regulations in 2021 with regard to that. There has been money put forward, but honestly, some of the rail crossings are so bad that the particular money that the feds have allocated will be all scooped up in British Columbia, no problem at all. So we have a very strong advocate joining me on the railway crossing issues in Langford, BC, and also in Lac Mégantic in Quebec. And we've forged those allies, and we are pushing forward with that advocacy work to make sure that rural Canada gets its share, but also small communities in smaller communities in rural Canada get their share as well. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. For those of you who are attending FCM, make sure you go to that Rural Caucus. That's going to be a huge issue.
Thank you. Item 10 is our committee minutes, and I would call on Councillor Gillis to present those minutes for our consideration.
Thank you, Warden Weber, members of County Council. It's my pleasure to present the the AM committee minutes of the Infrastructure and Development Services, Public Health, and whatever else was on the screen that I can't see. We had a robust discussion about some various issues, some more than others, and it is my pleasure to bring the minutes forward to you for your consideration.
Thank you. Item number 1 is correspondence. Item number 2, correspondence, supported. Item number 3, detailed plan for the $300 million. Questions? Item number 4, activity report. Item number 5, roads construction program to receive. Public health services, number 6, dealing with correspondence. Number 7, also correspondence. Item number 8, information reports received. Item number 9, regarding community paramedic pilot program. Questions? Item number 10. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, members of County Council. I did go through the information that came. What is this pilot program, and $230,000? What is it, and what's it going to do for us?
Through you, Warden, thank you for the question. So the Paramedicine Project has been endorsed by Council at a high level. You'll recall it was a part of the strategic plan for EMS. So this presents an opportunity for staff to engage in a community paramedicine program. So in short, what that does is it allows us to work with community partners and reduce pressures on emergency departments. As you know, part of the Patients First strategy is a very high-level message from the minister that the health system's broken. And what this does at the local level is allow staff to reach out, work with users of the 911 system, those who are identified as high users of 911, and work to intervene. So the project is being funded 100%. It's a pilot project. And insofar as we meet the outcomes for reducing the metrics that are put out by the ministry, then we'll be successful in trying to ascertain long-term funding to create a permanent program. So that's it at a high level.
Just a quick one. Is this a one-year project, or are they going to force it back on us and we'll have to pick the cost up?
No, so through the pilot phase, it's a 9-month pilot phase project. But what the ministry has done is it has infused additional funding into the health system to support 100% funded community paramedicine programs in Ontario. Lambton did make application for a part of that funding some years ago, and we were unsuccessful. And recently, our new manager has been successful in getting some pilot money to get this initiative moving in the County of Lambton.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on number 9? Number 10, Archive Shelving Project. Number 11, 12, and 13 were in camera. Item number 14 is motion to adjourn. Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Warden Weber. I would ask the esteemed body to, I would like to make a motion to adopt these minutes.
Seconder, Councillor Marriott. Any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have the joint meeting of their standing committees that met between the committees. I'd like a motion just to receive or to approve that report. Councillor Broad, seconded by Councillor Bruzewitz. All in favor of that? That's carried. Thank you. And our PM minutes. And I would call on who's the vice chair?
It is me.
That'd be you.
Thank you, Warden
Councillor
Weber.
Gilliland.
The long-term care, corporate services, finance, facilities, and court services, social services, also known as the PM committee, met on April 19th at 1 o'clock, and I submit these minutes to County Council's consideration.
Thank you. Item 1, correspondence. Item 2, information reports, resident quality inspection. Item 3, continuous quality improvement. Item 4, regarding the volunteer program. Item 5, correspondence and corporate services. Item 6, information regarding council remuneration. Councillor Arnold.
Yes, Warden Weber, I just thank you for letting me speak to this. I think it's, I'm a little ahead. I'm premature. Sorry. I got to go to number 9.
Okay.
Or 8.
Yeah. Okay. Item 7, electricity rebates report. Item 8, elimination of councillor's tax-free allowance. Councillor Arnold.
That's better. That's an enclosed 6, right? It's got 2. Never mind. Anyways, I've had a lot of people in the community have asked me about this and the implication and that sort of thing. And the way I've always explained it to them, it's a couple of different items. And the way it was explained to me when I first started on council, the purpose of the 1/3 deduction was to take the place and to try and offset the costs of running a campaign, first and foremost, because you cannot declare that as an expense on your personal income tax. So this was to try to soften that blow. The other thing that anyone that's involved in business knows, you can take part of your house and have it turn into an office and all those good things. This was to help offset those costs as well. And that's why it was recognized that, yes, this level of government is an important level of government. There are extra expenses that every one of us incur, and this was to recognize that and to try and not to make a person rich or anything else, but just to recognize that and show respect for the office that we all hold. And so by taking that away, it kind of negates that whole process, unless they're going to change the income tax laws and allow us to make claims for some of these expenses that we all incur on a regular basis. So it's just, that's all I wanted to say. Nothing too exciting, but I think people lose sight that for us that run in public office, this isn't a volunteer position. The hours that are put in are long, and there's a lot of reading involved, a lot of legislation at different levels of government as well as our own. And it was to show respect for people that are willing to stand up and be counted amongst all of our peers to do the will of the people at this level. Thank you.
Councillor, Mr. Innes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just wanted to update Council. When I first brought this report, I indicated to you that we had sort of found it buried in an explanation of the budget and that we were pursuing it. Last night, I received an email from Pat Vanini of AMO indicating that AMO is undertaking a two-stage survey. One is they want to determine or get as much data as they can about what the remuneration rates are for members of municipal council across the province. And they also are asking for input with regards to how many are still claiming the one-third allowance, and some comments with regards to what the impact of those allowances or removing those will be for councillors. That is to be submitted by all municipalities in the province by the 23rd of May, and I expect that we will see something from that come back afterwards. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that AMO is now picking this up, and from the fact that 2/3 of her email was capitalized, bolded, and underlined, I think she's really concerned about it.
Councillor Case.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that Councillor Arnold said, but I mean, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect here as well. I mean, when you look at smaller communities, the wages are not big. When you look at some of the larger cities, where there's $120,000 salary per year, I can understand, but I think there should be a caveat in this whole process where maybe, I don't know, I'm not here to suggest a number, maybe once it hits $60,000 or $70,000 you pay the tax piece. But I mean, there's so many communities around where, you know, councillors are making $3,000 and $4,000 a year to do this work. And I mean, I really think it's good that AMO's involved with it. I think it's good that AMO's involved with this. It scares me a little bit at the same time. But at the same time, I think that there has to be a bit of a caveat when it comes to this type of thing, because I said, you know, a lot of communities, as Councillor Arnold said, they don't pay a lot of money to these folks, and it is an offsetting way of trying to retrieve some of your expenses. So again, I hope some common sense will enter into this equation at the end of the day. So thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. Any other comments? Item number 9 kind of speaks to the same issue, and we have sent a letter off, and now that we know that AMO is kind of doing a research on this. So any questions on item 9? Item number 10, this is regarding tax policy. Councillor Broad.
Thank you, Warden Weber. We've just got some more information on that, and I don't know when the time is that we could have maybe John explain this. I presume also that John's on a bit of a timeline, and I think the motion that I made for that just involves 2017 taxation year, so maybe we should move ahead with this and take this information, because I'm sure our treasurers and fellow councillors will want to read this back at our local municipalities, and we can maybe alter that for 2018 if necessary.
Okay. Anyone else like Mr. Innes to speak to this?
Yes, thank you. I was going to ask for to be able to speak to the report. This was a supplemental report that we had commissioned in response to some questions that were coming from your treasurers and in various conversations I'd had with some members of council as well. You'll see that it's split into a number of sections. What we did was, or one of the questions that came up was, what was the total impact if we combined upper tier and area municipality, tax impacts, and we shifted the ratio. So in other words, we always, in the tax report, I always talk in terms of global across the county. The question was more, what happens in my own municipality? Because again, in the comments, there's always varying degrees, and what is going to impact on you here is your degree of farmland. So if you look at Point Edward, the only impact they have is from the county level. Everyone else has some sort of an impact related to at their own level as well, because except for Point Edward, everybody's got farmland. Don't know why the Point doesn't, but it's always interesting to see that. Regardless, so what we did here was we wanted to come up and identify what was the impact on the other classes by municipality if we had gone forward with the 0.25 to the 0.22 shift. I'm going to pick on Brooke-Alvinston simply because they happen to be the first one in the list here. And if you go through and you take a look at that, you'll see that there is a combined potential impact of close to 5% that is coming through to them. 4.78. What that 4.78 means is that in the absence of any budgetary increases in 2017, if you dropped the ratio on farmland from 0.25 to 0.22, then every other class except for farmland is going to see a 5% increase in taxation. So think in terms of all of the assessment impacts that you've had. Think in terms of the budgetary impacts that you've had and what that's already done to the tax rates in your municipality. And then for Brooke-Alvinston, this would be 5% on top of that. So again, this is just trying to reinforce the reasons why we were recommending the status quo. Another question that came up was, so what would be the impact on an individual farm unit? So if you flip to the last page of your report, Table 14, what we did here was we took the net impact in total in each municipality, divided that by the number of farms. It's a very crude measurement, but still as best as we could come up with, and said, so what would be the average impact on a farm in your municipality from this change? So again, looking at Brooke-Alvinston, we would impose a 5% increase on every other class except for farmland or farms in order to save $111 on average for the farmer. So that sort of is we're trying to give you an additional report that will make it easier to try and explain to your farmers and your ratepayers why the decision that has been put into this report was made. So this report is will be provided to your area treasurers so that they are aware of it. And if there are other questions that come up throughout this, we will work with them on this because we'll be chatting quite a bit over the next little while because of tax capping. So I just wanted to be able to explain that to everybody, Mr. Warden. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Warden Weber, and to members of County Council. I want to thank Mr. Ennis for the work he's done on this study. I was chatting with him yesterday. If you refer to Schedule B, which Mr. Ennis put together as well, I just want to make councilors aware of the budget that the county passed in March. Depending on which number you use, 2.2 or 3.2 after, or 2.2% after growth. Schedule B on the far right-hand column for my municipality, which we were hoping a blended rate increase for the year we'd be able to hold it at 5%. But with the 9.75% with the change in assessment, Like the 2.2% that we passed is a 9.7% for Enniskillen. So our blended rate increase for the year is going to be 8.6%. So although I know 5% sounds like a lot to put on other classes, I've changed my mind on where I felt before there was not a need to change the ratio down to 0.22. I'm now, with seeing these numbers, and this isn't just, if it was just 1 year, I could accept it, but with 3 more years to come, I think we should very much consider the 0.22%, because this comes at a time when we're trying to make up the loss of the OMPF. It's like a double whammy. So I ask every member of council to consider that, since it's too late for 17, at least for 18. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments regarding item 10? Councillor Napper.
I'm not just too clear on taxes. I don't like them. How does that compare back to a number of years ago when the lakeshore or lakefront property, I think, took a 70 or 80% hit? We didn't change the class there. Would it have had the same impact as what we're doing here?
Mr. Innes?
The mechanism that was driving that increase and that impact, however long ago that was, is exactly the same. What we're dealing with here is the fact that you've had one class of property, one type of property has increased in value considerably more than any of the other classes that are there. So if you're going through and you're looking at the Schedule B that Councillor Marriott has referred to, you will see that that there has been a significant shift of tax liability from the areas that have very little or no farmland onto the areas that have farmland. On average, there are some interesting results in there, but that's what's driving most of the dollars that the changes you see. And that's simply a reflection of the fact that farmland increased in value far more than the other classes of property that are there. The difference between what happened with the lakeshore properties and farmland is there is no unique class that the lakefront properties fell into. So they were part of the residential class, and the ratio on residents is always at 1. You can't change that. So there was no mechanism to address the impact on the lakefront properties. You could, yes, reduce the ratio on the farmland here. But again, when we looked at it, we were trying to determine what the net impact was going to be. We looked at the per unit impact on a farm. It seemed to be relatively small. And yes, we do tend to talk in terms of the impact on the residents here, but I also have to take a look at the impact on the commercial and the industrial properties. And we would have been putting that same 5% increase of tax onto our commercial and our industrial properties, which would have reduced the competitiveness at a time that we're still trying to attract more industries in as well. So I've made this comment several times. I don't dispute anything that the OFA, LFA have said. Councillor Marriott is right in his observations. It's just that when we take a look at everything in total, that it still seemed to me, and in the discussions with the area treasurers in general, that the most balanced and the best way of doing things was to go with the status quo when you looked at everything in totality. So that's my only comment at this point, is that, yes, there has been a shift of tax onto the farmers, but if we start shifting anything around, it shifts it onto the other classes. And I was more concerned with the impact on the commercial industrial classes than I was on the residential, but there's still that significant change as well.
Thank you. Anything else on item 10? Social Services Division, number 11, correspondence. Item 12, information, annual information. Councillor Arnold. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Weber. Councillor Marriott mentioned that it was too late to do anything in 17. I thought that's what we're doing today, is setting the rates today. So we can change it today and try a motion if Councillor Marriott wants to do that. Like, there's nothing stopping him because this is the day we're doing this. That's my understanding. So I don't want anybody to feel that this is a done deal at this point. We can still make the motion to change it. Whether it passes or not, that's another story. Because it's a difficult decision. When I look at those folks, they'd be going down the least amount of all of us when it comes to the farm stuff, because the rest of us, our farm values went up higher than theirs. No offense to them. So when you look at that from that perspective, when you look at the city of Sarnia, St. Clair, and some of the other ones in Lambton Shores, our taxes would be going down substantially, or by points, more than what the Don Euphemias, the Enniskillen, and everybody else. So who knows how a vote would go, but I just want to make sure that Kevin understands that this is not set in stone until after we make the motions to set it today.
That's correct. And I guess I did not have a motion from the floor to change item 10. It was in the report. If someone wants to change that motion or present an amendment to it, that's possible. Councillor Marriott.
Thank you, Warden Weber and Councillor Honor, for pointing that out. The only reason I didn't know if I could come forward with a motion was because Mr. Ennis hadn't really completed this, but saying that, I will make the motion and try it, then that we do go with the 0.22 from 0.25, because I think when it washes out, the 5% shouldn't be that high. So anyway, sorry, I'll stop there with the motion.
Okay, so what would the motion be? I guess the motion that item number 10, that motion be changed to reflect and change the farm class. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Seconder for that? Councillor Arnold? Question? Councillor Arnold?
Yes, and there was a request to continue dropping it, but I would suggest, if it's all right with the mover, it'd be a one-time drop from a 2.5 to a 2.2, and that's it. We're not going to drop it any further or anything else. It's a one-shot deal, and it's going to continue on until the council decides to make it different with a new motion. But I don't want anybody to have the perception that this is going to be an automatic to do exactly what we were asked for. I can appreciate a one-time, but I'm not going to see it next year another point, next year another point.
Okay, so we're all clear on the motion, and Councillor Case had a question.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden, maybe back to Mr. Ernest. Just wondering about the consequences of doing this now. We've already set our local budgets at this time. I don't know if there's much consequences when it comes to that or not, but what would the consequences be from a financial standpoint if we change this now? Again, it was not part of our budget deliberation. I mean, we're dealing with ratios today, as Councillor Arnold said. So I guess I want to have a look at the big picture on what this exactly does before I raise my hand. Thank you.
Mr. Ennis?
It does not change the number of dollars that are being raised from the tax base. What it would do is that when we get to the bylaws on the rate, we would have to change Schedule A, Schedule B to that. We could, if you decide to reduce the ratio, we can still pass the bylaws. We'll just change the schedules out and pass it out to everybody that's going to be there. What it has is it has two effects. One is it's going to change all the tax rates across the county, with the exception of the multi-residential, which is hard capped under provincial regs right now. There will then change and shift the relative burdens between the area municipalities, so that 9.72 that Councillor Marriott was talking about will change. By how much will depend after everything washes through. Otherwise, it means that everybody except for the farm and the multi-residential class will pay more taxes in 2017 than they would if you did not make this motion.
Follow-up, Councillor Case?
Yes, if I could, Mr. Warden. And I'm very open to looking at this next year. I really, really am. This is just my opinion on this thing. I'm not interested in doing it now. I think there is going to be an effect on the system and on all the other, not all the other, but the other areas of taxation. So again, as much as I'm open-minded to take a look at this next year, I mean, through the process, it's an important thing for people in my municipality too. I am not, at this point in time, interested in looking at changing it this year. I know the discussion in this chamber was to take a look at it next year. I understand it's doable, and this is the time we can look at the ratios. But at the same time, I think it would be prudent for us to take a look at this next year. And I mean, lots of us are doing some lobbying right now with the provincial government. I've got a meeting myself next week, and one of the big subjects is the OMPF, or some state sustainable funding moving forward. This budget didn't have a lot in it this time around. But again, as much as I'm sympathetic to the folks in my community on the agricultural side, and I am willing to look at it next year, I'm not willing to look at it this year, so I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Councillor Hand?
Yes, I'm not comfortable with voting on this today without reviewing it with the rest of my council because of the impact, so I would prefer if we were able to wait. I just like to discuss it with my whole council because there is an impact.
Councillor Gillis?
Thank you, Warden Weaver, members of County Council. I echo what Councillor Hand is saying, but also we've had no other presentations from any other groups that is going to be affected by this other than the Farm Association. So I think it's a bit premature, and certainly, along with Councillor Case, very willing to have a look at it next year, but I think we haven't given everyone the opportunity to have some discussion on this.
Councillor Arnold?
Well, thank you, Warden Weber. I'd just like to remind everyone on County Council that at budget time I tried to pass a motion to drop it from 0.25 to 0.20, and I was told that it was inappropriate to do it or try to do it at that time because the tax ratios will be discussed later in the year, and that's today. And I'm sure that most people forget that I tried to do that, and because I was adamant that we needed to discuss it at that time, but we all do the tax ratios later in the session, and I respect that, and that's why I pulled the motion back, that because I knew when we had asked Mr. Ennis to prepare all this information that we would have an opportunity to do it because this is the time we do that. And I respected that part of the process, and that's why I was very happy to second Councillor Marriott's motion, because next year we'll be going through the exact same thing, because it'll be too late next year to do it at today based on the budget we passed 2 months ago. So unless we have a directional motion, if this one doesn't make it, to have Mr. Ennis prepare it to have it implemented for next year, or discussion for next year, or something to that extent, then we'll be in the exact same spot next year.
Okay. Councillor Napper.
I'm confused on this here, and I feel we just got this morning, basically this comparison. How is this going to affect those that got their tax bills sent out already? We've already sent our tax bills out. It's been set on there. What's the effect going to have there? Are we going to have to go back and recalculate them all? And
Mr. Ennis?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Under the Municipal Act, your first bill, at least, if not your first two bills, are based on your prior year's taxes, and you're allowed to bill up to 50% of that amount. So your tax bills that are sent out have been based on last year's taxation, not on the taxation for this year. So there is no impact if you were to make this change on the bills that have been sent, because they're based on last year's tax policy. It's always your bills from the second half of the year that reflect the tax policy decisions made here. So going forward, it will make a change, but there's no impact on the bills that have already been sent out.
Okay. The motion on the floor is an amendment, and it will be amending Part A of the motion, which is that the property class changes from 25% to 22% for farmland. So I would ask for a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? The amendment is lost. we'll carry on, and at the minutes at the end will be what we'll be voting on the motion, not amendment. Item 12. Item 13, housing service statistics. Item 14, information on immigration online. Item 15, homeless enumeration, received and filed. Item 16 and 17 were dealt with in camera. Item 18 and item 19 is the motion to adjourn. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, Warden Weber. I will move this day's minutes.
Seconder for that? Councillor Gillis. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I see no items tabled from previous. Notices of motion. I see none. Other business. Councillor Broad.
Thank you, Warden Weber. Just maybe to follow up to that tax ratio we're just talking about, I'd like to make a motion that we get the information in time, that before budget next year, that we can sit down, go through and discuss the tax ratios. Like Steve had said, he tried to bring it up at budget time, and apparently that wasn't the appropriate time. If don't want to get specific on the dates until I talk to John, or John can make a presentation to us.
I have a seconder, Councillor Case. Mr. Ennis, you'd like to speak to that?
Just a matter of clarification, Mr. Warden. Do you want a discussion exclusively on farm ratio change? We discussed it in the report that was here. It seems that, if I'm understanding the concerns of council properly, that you want to be able to have a separate discussion focusing on changing the ratios of farmland specifically, and have a more in-depth discussion of that without, how shall we say, being potentially sidetracked by the other tax policy issues that come up every year. So just wanted to know whether you want the tax policy discussion before budget, the entire one, or are you looking for a subset specifically just to talk about the farm ratios?
Mr. Broad?
I think, to be fair, we need to look at everything. When I look at the summary of tax change here, my commercial and pipeline are going to pick up a very large chunk of the farm if we do change it. So I think it needs to be a broad scope of the report, is that we look at all all classes. And it would be nice if it was before budget, because once you present us a 5-inch binder, we don't generally have much time for other stuff, John. So.
Okay. Concurred by the seconder. Councillor Arnold.
What I would suggest, Warden Weber, is that maybe we can take this back to each of our respective councils and get a motion from them, either endorsing that type of movement or not, by November of this year. I think that would be fair. It gives everybody time to do analysis. And Mr. Ennis has done a great job getting us this far. And I think that if we had it back so we could make a decision to give him further direction on by our November meeting, then that would be appropriate. If I could ask the mover and seconder to make that as part of a friendly amendment to their process.
Absolutely. This report will be circulated to all councils for input, and a report brought back for November.
I'd like a motion from each council if we could, because if each council is having a split time too, then there may be some that won't make it and others that will.
That's okay with the mover and seconder? Okay. Everyone's clear on that? All in favor of that? That is carried. Bylaws. Items 14 through bylaws through 19. I would ask the CAO.
Yes, Mr. Warden. Moved by councillors Gilliland and Veen, that bylaw 14 to 19 of 2017 as circulated be taken as read a first and second time.
Questions? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
Moved by councillors Cook and McGugan, that bylaw 14 to 19 of 2017 as circulated be taken as read a third time and finally passed.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Broad, Councillor Cook. All in favor of that? And we sing "O Canada."